Hey there, I'm srcmake and welcome to the tutorial of building a data visualization dashboard powered by our Actian vector database. So in the previous tutorial, we installed Actian vector on our Ubuntu 16 machine. We loaded a data set of the United States airplane data into the database, and then we queried the database using SQL. If you don't know about any of that, then go to the previous tutorial, which you'll find a link to everywhere, and you can see that we did that, and there's a YouTube video to get you through it too. It's really important to do that because we're building on that in this video. So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to build a data visualization dashboard, and as a spoiler alert, I'll tell you it involves talking about what part of the data set we should be looking at, and what interesting insights from the data set we want to use to give to another person to say, hey, look, this is a cool data set. And we might want to perform queries over time over it, like often. And to do that, we need to make some SQL queries from the database. We need to actually use a programming language to format the data into pretty picture format to make it look visually appealing. And we're going to use Python for doing that. And then we need to actually put those pictures together in an HTML page to make it look even nicer, presented in a nice one-page format. And then we're going to automate the build process using some command line stuff using a Makefile. So we're really touching on everything in this tutorial, and we're going to be doing that in our Ubuntu 16 virtual machine later on. For now, we're just going to do some talking, but it's going to be really hands-on, so stay tuned. And to get all of the resources you need for this topic, you can go right here on my webpage. Go ahead and click the link below this video to get to the webpage. And while you're down there, hit the like and subscribe button for this YouTube channel. Thanks. So let's start out. What is a data visualization dashboard? Basically, you have some data, right? And you want to make it in like a pretty format so that people can look at it. You want to gain some insights from the data, just, for analysis purposes or just statistics. And most of the times you want it to be a little interactive. In this tutorial, we're going to make it a little basic, but you can just put it in an HTML page. So it's just pretty pictures in an HTML page. Let's put it like that for now. So how do we make one of these? Well, I already talked about it in the intro to this video, but we need to choose what data we want to visualize from the data set. And this takes thinking. It's not like some computer science thing. We just need to think what part of the data set is interesting. Then we need to extract data from the data set using some SQL queries because, again, it's data in a database, but we need to actually use some programming language, in this case SQL, to query the database to get the data that we need. And once we have that data, we need to write a program that puts the extracted data into a chart format. So it's just data sitting in a file, but you need to make it look pretty. You need a programming language for that. And once you have all those pictures, you format it using a simple HTML page. And then we automate the build process, as I said, to do all of this for us. And you're going to see how this works. It's really, really simple, really actually. The process is really beautiful. I like it compared to like other data visualization tools. So let's start out. What part of the data set should we visualize? So again, our data set right now is the airplane data for the United States from 1987 to 2017. And we need to think about this. What could be interesting from this data set that we want to show other people or just learn about? So let's look at, I drafted up 6 items, 6 key insights that we're going to look at from this data set that we're going to be doing in this tutorial. You might think of some other stuff and you can include it, but let's just worry about this for now. So the number of flights that were canceled compared to the number of successful flights. So how many flights were canceled? What % of flights get canceled in the United States? That's interesting, right? And we can visualize that with a pie chart. Then the season with the most flights. So which season gets the most flights? Do you think people travel more in the summer or the winter? That's kind of interesting too. Then the number of flights by year. So do people travel more now compared to 1987, or was there a spike and then people travel less? Let's figure that out. Then we will learn about the 7 most popular destination states. So which states have the most people wanting to go to it? That's, again, I find all of these interesting, so it's kind of funny. Next, the average flight time. What is the average flight time for a flight in the United States? Pretty simple one. And finally, the delay type that causes the most problems. So which delay type is the most troublesome? And to give you an example, is it weather that's an issue, or is it security that causes these delays in air travel? We'll find out soon, actually. I don't want to give any spoiler alerts because it really surprised me, to be honest with you. So we need to move on to the SQL queries, and this is the part where we actually get hands-on with the actual database in our virtual machine. So we are going to switch to the virtual machine. Now this is pretty much exactly how it was when I left it from the previous video, so I didn't do anything new, so we're going to be doing everything together. The only thing, I just closed some of the windows and I opened up the actual web page for this, and the URL is a little off. Let me just fix that really quickly. This is the actual URL that it's going to be on. Looks a little weird right now because it's a draft link, but again, the official link to the web pages are going to be below this video, so don't get like psyched out. So what do we want to do? First thing, we need to actually just set up a few things before we even talk about SQL. So what we want to do is we want to travel to our computer, to our home, to our Actian directory. We're going to be doing everything in Actian's username today, because that's the username that actually owns the database. As you remember from the previous video, Actian's the one who's in control of everything. So first, we're in srcmake right now because srcmake is the user who owns this who we're logged in as. But what we want to do first is we want to make, let's actually change this to sudo. I will fix this. But we want to make Actian a sudo user. So you use this command to do it. And I have to fix this to add sudo in the front when I actually publish this video. Next, we want to log in as Actian, and you do that with su Actian with the dash between it. So now you can see that our srcmake at Linux changed to Actian at Linux because our terminal is now logged in as Actian, and he's going to stay as Actian for the rest of this tutorial. And finally, you need to make this command to start Ingress to actually start our database. So we're just going to source this, and that should work for you. Again, this is a particular command that we learned about in the previous video, so make sure you're on top of that if you don't know. So that's it. Our terminal is set up, and our Ubuntu 16 virtual machine is basically set up from the previous video. Now what we want to do is we want to make these SQL queries, because again, we have all this data that we want to learn about, but it exists just as a theory right now. We actually need to pull this data out of the database so that we can use it. And you need some SQL to talk to the database to actually get these numbers that we want to talk about. For example, just to go over a quick one, select count, which is the count of all votes from on time, where canceled does not equal 0. And I forgot which one this means. I think this means the flight is not canceled. That's what this query means. Select a number of flights where it's not canceled. Pretty simple, right? And we need 2 of those queries for our programming language. Basically, the number that are canceled and the number that are successful. And we're going to be using that later. But what we need to do, as you can see, is we need to create, we're going to encapsulate these SQL queries inside of a file. So these are paired off as one thing. These 2 queries count for the canceled data visualization pie chart. So we need to encapsulate that by putting it into a file. So we're going to create a file for that with this first command in our terminal. And then we are going to sudo gedit to open that file that we just created. And the reason we need to do this again is because we are our Ubuntu is logged in as srcmake, but srcmake doesn't really have permission for the Actian folder. So you have to do it through the Actian command line. And if you don't know what that means, maybe one day you'll get like really good at Linux and you'll understand. Actually, you don't have to be really good at Linux. So we're just going to copy these commands in for all of these commands. Just take for granted that I have the correct commands for you. And we're going to do these 2 at a time now. So now we're going to create this command 2.sql file. Then we're going to open it for editing. And we are going to copy this in. And you can see the SQL there. Again, you can go after this video to verify this, but for now, we're just going to go through this process to make it a little quick. I actually have another tutorial on SQL if you want to see it. And we need to count the number of flights for each year. So we need 30 SQL. Actually, it's 31 SQL statements for each year. And this might not be the prettiest way to do it, but I think it's the best for this tutorial. Like, it's not the most efficient per se, but it's good enough for this tutorial, just for visual demonstration purposes, to make us go quick through this. So we open command 4 and we copy in this query. And we just copy it into command 4, save it, that's good. I'm really proud of this command, actually. It took me, it took some effort to actually get that command working when I was setting this up, to get the top 7 states. coming up with this was actually pretty fun, to be honest with you, the SQL queries. The Python coding for the charts wasn't that fun, but the SQL queries were really fun. And finally, the delay types query, which you can see a little bit of. Want to see each query type, and I'll go over this really quickly. I don't know if you can see this really well, but there are carrier delays, weather delays, NAS delays, which is, I think, NASA, like astronaut stuff is what causes the delay. Security delays and late aircraft delays are the 5 types of delays. And we'll go over these later, but that's like really interesting to me. So those are our queries. We are going to use these queries with these commands later, but we're not going to do it right now, so don't worry about it. It says don't do this yet. So we've got our query set up in their files. We can actually get the data for each of the actual interesting data points that we want to visualize. And actually, no, let me not. Actually, you know what? Fine, let's do one. Let's do one really quickly just to demonstrate, because we're doing a YouTube video. Really quickly. So we're going to run the first one. And let me raise the terminal a little bit. Okay, great. So it outputs to 1.txt, and this is the answer. So the number of canceled flights are 2.8 million, and the number of successful flights are 161 million. So our output's going to be like this for each query. And then we need a programming language, which is what we're going to do now, to actually take this data and format it into a picture for us. So that is where this Python comes in. So hopefully I have this correctly where we have all the Python files we need. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to create a Python file named makepix.py. That's what this command does. And then we are going to install using pip a Python installation library, the matplotlib library. Oh, pip is not installed. So sudo apt-get install Python pip, I think, is the command. Hopefully this works. Yes. Okay, so we need to install Python pip. I didn't know that came by default. I guess I automatically installed it in my other tutorial. I mean, like my test database when I was doing this. This is why I like to do these videos, because I know that the virtual machine is, how do I say this? I hate it when I watch other people's tutorials and they don't have, like, they have some dependencies I don't have, so that I get errors on my computer, but their computer seems fine because they have some library they installed like 6 years ago. I hate it when that happens, so I always try to do things fresh. So installing matplotlib, I just sudo got installed pip. Hopefully that's all the libraries that we need. And now we are going to open our makepix.py file, which again is going to just say, okay, we have these queries in these txt files, where eventually we're going to have them in these txt files. We want to format them into pretty pictures, pretty.png files. And you can see the code for this on the website. I don't want to go over it too much. Wow, I didn't realize it was so much code. I spent like all day coding it. Not all day, but a decent amount of time. So we're going to save that and close it. And this should, if you read through the code, it will go through each of these txt files, assuming they exist, and it will just create a plot and save it as a PNG image. And finally, we are going to, so we have these PNG files right now, assumingly in the process. Well, what we want to do is visualize it in a dashboard, but we want it in HTML format. So we're going to create a dashboard.html file. And you saw that just got created. And we are going to put this HTML in it. Now, I didn't want to make this too complicated. And to be honest with you, we could have made this like super pretty and responsive for all types of mobile devices. But that would have made for like a bad tutorial, because there would have been too much HTML. We already went through SQL, Python, HTML, and now we're going through Linux command lines in the next part. But so I wanted to keep it basic. But this basic HTML just creates a basic page, and it shows an image. So it's going to show a cancel flights image that's called 1.png. It's going to show an image for the most popular seasons called 2.png, etc., etc. The only difference, instead of a picture for the average flight time, it's just like a number, right? Just the number of minutes that the average flight time is. So what we do is we are going to just have this script that reads the number out of the file from the data set that we get from 5.txt. The SQL query is going to give 5.txt with the number of minutes, and we are going to just output that as a div element. And I don't want to go into the HTML or JavaScript for that, but that's not a picture. That's just going to be straight up text with some JavaScript that builds it. So now we want to automate this build process because everything I just said sounds a little confusing, right? So let's just create a Makefile to do that. Hopefully you know about Makefiles. My name is srcmake, so Makefile is very important to me. Hopefully you watch the tutorial on my website if you don't know what a Makefile is. Basically, it's going to automate this process for us. So we created something called Makefile, a file named Makefile. I'm going to add this code to it. And, no, not that. Open this. And let's go through the code really quickly. It's going to say running SQL commands. It's going to do all of our SQL commands, which means it's going to execute command1.sql, and it's going to pipe that output into 1.txt, and it's going to do that for all 6 of our commands, which is going to give us the data for our 6 interesting facts that we talked about in the beginning of the video. And once that's done, it's going to run python makepix.py, and that's going to say, okay, we have these text files with the data inside of them. Let's format them into pretty pictures. Look, for example, we've got this for the canceled flights. Let's make this into a pie chart. Let's make these 2 points into a pie chart with the relevant percentage that's inside of it. And again, you can read the Python code on the website if you want to do that, but it's a lot of code that I don't want to spend too much time on. And once that's done, these pictures are going to exist. Like 1.png is going to exist. And our default dashboard.html file is going to automatically say, okay, I see this 1.png file in the directory. So when I load the HTML page, when I get loaded into the browser, I'll just automatically update to the latest picture file. So anytime those PNG pictures get updated when we run our Makefile, this is automatically updated, which is pretty nice to me. The HTML file exists statically. The only thing you need to update is the actual pictures. And so what you need to do now is, if you were somehow not in the Actian terminal, you need to cd home/Actian to get to this directory. And then you type make. And what's going to happen is our SQL commands are going to run. And again, this is about Actian Vector, the database. So you should take a moment to say, oh, wow, look how quick these SQL commands are. Because this is like, I did some counting. And if you go to a downloads folder, you can see our CSV files from last time. And if you go to properties, it's 55 gigs of CSV files. So it's a lot of data. And then we uploaded all these CSV file data into the database. So it's a lot of data that these commands have to go through. And let's go back to our Actian directory. How do we get there? Computer, home, Actian users directory, and okay. So this last one for the security delays took a while. It's the most strenuous command by far because, I don't know, I just noticed that and I thought it was interesting because you have to go through each delay type, and I made the query a little, maybe there was a better way of doing it. Again, I tried to make these commands in the code like really simple for the tutorial since it's so all over the place, but maybe there are better ways to do it, more efficient ways, but efficient's not always pretty. So spoiler alert, it's done. I'm going to close this terminal because I don't think we need it anymore. And you can see what happened was we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6.png for our 6 interesting data points if you scroll back up. Remember, we chose 6 types of data that we wanted to find out about, and these PNG files got created for them. So what do? We just double-click dashboard.html, and it's loaded. So let's bring this over a little, and let's look at the data really quickly. So our dashboard is loaded anytime. Oh, no. Let's look at the data really quickly. So the data dashboard for U.S. airplane flights between 1987 to 2017, powered by Actian Vector Database. So our first chart is the number of canceled flights, and 2% of flights get canceled, 98% are successful, which is pretty interesting to me. 2% is actually a lot to consider. Actually, 2% of flights get canceled. That's a pretty... I don't like those odds for me personally. Next, the most popular seasons. Spring, they're all basically, within 1% of each other, which is not surprising. Summer is slightly more popular, but winter's a little less popular than everyone else, but it's so close. I would think that people love to travel in the summer, but I guess not in the United States. I guess it's just about even. People need to travel as much as every season. Next, the number of flights by year. We've got this scatter plot. And you can see that, okay, so let's make an interesting insight from the data set, because remember, we're not just doing programming, we need to actually think a little. Our data set starts from 1987 and it goes to 2017. So these years are incomplete. 1987 has less data, 2017 has less data, so we understand why these would be less than normal. But the year like 2001 or something like that has less, it doesn't have data for that year, evidently. Look how low. I think it's a 0 count. So for some reason, the data set doesn't have data for this year, I guess. I didn't even notice that, to be honest with you, but I guess that's what the data is telling us. It's a good thing we analyze that. You can see the trend is just like it went up a little, then it had its ups and downs, but it still generally went up. Looks like 2006 or so to 2010 was when it peaked. Airplane flights peaked, so that's interesting. I'm glad I learned that. Next says top 7 destination states. Should I make this a little bigger? I can make this a little bigger for this. So the most popular state is actually California, and we can see this number is a little off. I guess we could change the code if we wanted to, but we're not going to. So the first state is California, the next state is Texas, next is Florida, and these guys win by far. New York's pretty low. I live in New York, but I can't believe Georgia is more popular of a destination state than New York, and so is Illinois. How's that even possible? The data does not lie. So the average flight time in the United States is 145 minutes, which is like, 2 hours and 15 minutes, which seems about on. It actually seems kind of high to me, but I guess like intercontinental flights, like New York to California, is 5 hours, so I can see how it's that high. And you figure that anything like super low, people would drive, so I can see how the data would like not favor low flights. Next, the biggest delay reasons. Actually, this is final for us. So the biggest delay reasons, and the number one delay reason is NAS, which means NASA or some aeronautics administration is causing our airplanes not to fly or to be delayed, which is surprising to me. I didn't think that mattered at all. Security is the least, and maybe I should fix this in the tutorial, but this is a little off center, but security is the least delay reason, like it causes the least delays. Late aircrafts I can understand, planes come in late, which causes other planes to go late because planes get reused. I understand that. Next, carrier reasons, which I guess is like luggage. I didn't know that luggage, like logistics, were that big of an issue. And weather is actually like surprisingly small too, right? That's crazy. Weather and security, the things we think about the most, are actually the least causes of delay. The biggest cause of delay is like airplane stuff and like luggage, which you would think would be easy, that no one actually cares about. I learned a lot personally. So that's it. That's our visualization dashboard. Just to reiterate everything one more time, we wanted to use this database to actually get some interesting insights and create like some pretty pictures so anyone could look at it really nicely. And the way we did this was we said, okay, first let's decide on what we should visualize. And we decided on 6 factors. And we decided also the types of charts they should be in, which is, just thinking out of the box. Next, we had to query the database using SQL. So we had to come up with some SQL queries to talk to the database to get this data. And then we had to format that data that we got into pretty pictures, because we have these TXT files with just like random numbers in them. But this is really ugly to look at. This is really pretty to look at, which is the whole point. So we had to generate these, and we happened to do that using Python. And once we had these pretty pictures all together, we wanted to put them all together into one document, and that document happened to be our dashboard.html file. So we did put that together. We just made an HTML file. And finally, we automated the whole process so that we would just make a Makefile. So anytime our database updates, so we need to do it again, we just type make in the command line. And it would query the database for us again. It would come into these files. The Python would generate new pictures, and this dashboard.html file doesn't have to do anything because it sees that these new pictures are what it needs to display. And this particular case, since it's just one number for the number of minutes, it would just get this number from the txt file, which is a design choice. Again, it's all design choices. You can do whatever you want. You can use whatever data visualization tool you want. But we just saw like at the low level how you would do it, because again, this is Actian on our local machine. It's not out on some cloud server. So yeah, so that's it. I'm srcmake, and this has been Actian Vector. I'm gonna try to do an AWS and Azure vector tutorial where we install and make the same kind of visualization tool. I don't know if I'll finish it on time. We'll have to see, but do keep an eye out for that. Feel free to like and subscribe this video and follow, because I will do other cool tutorials like this. And thanks for watching. Whew, that was a long one.